Welcome to Charts Today. It is Monday, the 20th of July, and we start with a chart of the Philadelphia Semiconductor Index. And because semiconductors have been such a huge driver for price increases in tech in the US and really driving the US indices, I thought we'd just start by looking at this chart. In March, we were at 7,000 and we went all the way to nearly 15,000. So we doubled in a few months. All on this AI revolution, of course, demand for chips being massive. And we are now seeing downside targets. In fact, there's 3 downside targets. We can largely discount this upside target that was generated off that initial thrust because we've seen these new downside targets kick in. We will look at this in more detail and some of the stocks in that index, but I thought I'd just start with that as a backdrop. And we're looking at then just the Nasdaq itself. And again, the interesting thing here is that we are seeing downward pressure here. So that's really quite key as well. And if we look then at the S&P future, and I use the future because the actual cash index has a license fee attached to it. But if I put on the moving average, the classic one is Paul Tudor Jones. Nothing good happens below the 200-day moving average. That's at 7,000. So that's the level to watch on the S&P. And the only reason I really pull this moving average up is on Friday for the London Stock Exchange Group. I do every third Friday of every month. I do a masterclass, and I did one on moving averages, and you can watch it here on the updated website, update.co.uk, resources, and you can go to LSEG Masterclass. All of last year's are here. These are for institutional investors that LSEG offer these webinars live on that Friday, but I put them up here so that you can enjoy them yourself. So really do take a look at those. Really quite good. So we can just clear off that average. We don't want on all our charts, and I prefer to use the clouds as I explain in that session on moving averages. Now looking at other markets, we're seeing actually the futures pretty flat today in the US. We are seeing the UK market, the FTSE index, the future is lower, so that's quite key. We're seeing the DAX down about 0.25%. So also we're just really struggling in markets, and the Japanese market actually down 2.6%. So that was on Friday's close there that we had a big move. China had a bit of respite, but when we look at the short-term chart, we can see that for China it is pretty bearish with these downside targets. So that's really quite key as well. The Sensex in India down 0.8%. We said that on Sensex we need to break that 80,000 level to activate that upside target, and so that's the level that we've got to watch. The Aussie market was relatively flat, no big change there. Waiting to see which way we break. Crude oil is up 3%. We put our energy report out to clients this morning. European gas prices up nearly 5%. Really has been one incredible run when we look at the charts there. And so we've seen rises now approaching 50%. So really significant there for energy, which of course will have a big impact on the European economy. UK gas prices up as well. Our energy bills are almost certain to rise at the next fix in the UK. So that's going to be really quite key. We're seeing some soft commodity moves, quite significant. Cocoa, good, strong upside targets there on cocoa. Coffee up 2%, a bit more mix there. And sugar has got an upside target on the short-term chart, but the daily chart, if we look at the short-term chart, but the daily chart, we see we are really stuck between the range there. Gold. This has been really significant. The downside target there, we're just sitting at that 4,000 level. We can't quite break that. We've got a new upside target but we are just sitting literally at $4,007 as we speak. And silver did break out of that 57.63 range to the downside, so that's not great either, but we do have a recovery target. We just have to watch that. Bond market's been relatively calm. If we look at the UK, it is up nearly 1% this morning, waiting for the new Prime Minister to come in, so it'll be interesting. Bond markets will want to react to that, as will sterling. So just got to wait and see what the policies are going to be. And then if we look at this semiconductor index, that's the short-term chart. So we started by looking at the daily chart. We had 3 downside targets. These things will show up in the short term first. So selling thrust, producing downside targets. So really quite key. Now, what you can do, if you're running LSEG or Metastock Zenith, which is effectively the private investor version of LSEG, is you can go to the constituents, and if you just put in the code here, stocks, and then you click constituents, you can rank them by market cap. You can then click there to copy them to a spreadsheet, and in the spreadsheet, this is them ranked by market cap. You can then go into Updater, you can go create list new, and it will offer you the ability to do it from pasted text. Once you've done that, you can renumber the rows here, and that now I have them in order of market cap. So these are the constituents, and we can now just go through. And I'm going to look at the short term. So Taiwan Semiconductor, lots of downside targets there. Broadcom, a few downside targets, but below the cloud. Micron also, what was at 1250, now at 850. So really significant moves there. AMD, downside targets. Note we've got a lot of targets here. We had a lot of upside targets, and now the downside targets are kicking in. SML, Intel, just lots of these downside targets being kicked. Applied Materials, and then Lam, ARM. No, so that's just really just shows us, and this is them by microcap. So really quite interesting that we are seeing that driver in the market has really kicked away. So definitely just something to watch. Now, the other thing on Friday, if we look at the daily chart, was SpaceX. Remembering that 135 was the IPO price, 150 was the launch price, and we're sitting at 123. Everyone who holds SpaceX is feeling pain. This is not good for the market. And if we look at those downside targets, there's a new downside target to 103. This is really going to change sentiment in the US on tech. It's really significant there. We've got now coming back to some of the more traditional tech stocks. We've got Apple. They are actually managing to make a new high and holding that new high, so that is quite bullish. Amazon, these bellwethers are a bit more protected than the drive and chips. We're seeing here Google or Alphabet, that's pushing higher as well. Remember in our LSEG, if you go back to our LSEG December one, you'll see that we said Google was looking good for the year ahead. Microsoft, this has really been a struggle. 550 was their high back middle of last year. So we versus a year ago in July, we are now at 350. So it's a $200 fall, been really significant. We actually have recovered back to 400, but that's been significant. Nvidia we've talked about, and Tesla were down 2.6% as well. So really significant there. Watching the Dow on Friday, you can see it was mostly negative. Travelers Group was the best performer. They had upside targets, and look at that upside target given back at 300 to 370, and a few months later, that's where we are. You cannot ignore the targets. Remembering that you can run Updater on top of Bloomberg, LSEG, Workspace, Metastock. There's a whole range of data services that you can run these off, and the targets are available on TradingView as well. So we did have Cisco Systems, again, a more traditional. We're up on Friday, only 2%, but look how many stocks were hit on the Dow, so really very significant. And if we look at the UK today, it is mostly a screen of red, only a handful of stocks up. So difficult times at the moment, and that's the key. Keep an eye on those price targets. Until tomorrow, have a great day. Bye for now.